Hi friends, today I'm going to be going over how to order decimals. So it's like comparing decimals, except we're using more numbers. So I'm going to start off with these four numbers. We have 3/10, 5/10, 6/10, and 2/10. So when we're comparing fractions, the first thing we need to look at is the number all the way to the left in each number. So in this case, we have a 0 in the ones place, a 0 in the ones place, a 0 in the ones place, and a 0 in the ones place. Okay? We can't compare them yet because they're all the same number. So now I'm going to look to my numbers in the 10th place. I have a 3, a 5, a 6, and a 2. If I'm ordering this from least to greatest, I know that 2 is smaller than 3, 5, and 6. So 2/10 would be my first number. Make sure you check them off as you go so you don't forget. We have 3/10. Then I have 5/10. And then I have 6/10. Okay? Seems pretty easy to start. I'm going to go over what it might look like when dealing with the hundredths place. Okay? So I'm going to have these numbers. All right, friends, I have three numbers up here. I have 0 and 57 hundredths. I have 0 and 52 hundredths, and I have 0 and 5/10. This is where this can get tricky. So I'm going to start off like I normally would, looking at the first numbers on the left, and they're all starting in the ones place. So I have 0, 0, and 0. I can't compare them yet. So now I'm going to move on to the 10th place. So we have a 5 in the 10th place, a 5 in the 10th place, and a 5 in the 10th place. Once again, I can't compare them because all of the numbers are the same. So now I'm going to move on to the hundredths place. The hundredths place, we have a 7, we have a 2, so we can compare. But here's the thing, 5/10 doesn't have a number in the hundredths place. So when this happens, what you need to do is you need to add a 0 as like a placeholder into the hundredths. So I have a 0, so now it says 50 hundredths, and 5/10 and 50 hundredths are equivalent. So now I can start comparing because I have a 7 in the hundredths place, a 2 in the hundredths place, a 0 in the hundredths place. So my smallest number is going to be 50 hundredths because of that 0 that we added in on the 5/10. Now I'm going to write my second decimal, which is 52 hundredths, okay? Because a 2 is larger than a 0 and less than a 7, which leaves us with 57 hundredths. I specifically did this example to show you guys to add the 0 if you need to, okay? There are some problems where you won't need to do that, but there are going to be some problems where there may not be a number in the hundredths place. And in that case, you just add a 0. It doesn't change the value, okay? And let's do one more. This one may seem easy, but can be tricky if you're not thinking clearly. So I'm going to do 12 and 98 hundredths, 6 and 5/10, and 7 and 26 hundredths, okay? This is where this can get tricky. You have to pay close attention, especially when you're reading them too, because that will be helpful in ordering them. Once again, I'm going to do it from least to greatest. So I'm looking at these numbers. The first number I see for the 12 and 98 hundredths is a 1, but it's in the tens place. So when I'm looking, I'm not going to compare the 1 to the 6 and 6 and 5/10 because 6 is in the ones place and 1 is in the tens place. You can't compare numbers that are in two different places. So I notice that there's a 1 in the tens place. When I look at 6 and 5/10, I think, is there anything in the tens place? And there's not, okay? So you can't compare them yet. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to 7 and 26 hundredths. I look at the 7. It's one spot before the decimal, which is in the ones place. Once again, I can't compare the 7 and the 1 because the 1 is in the tens place and the 7 is in the ones place. So I already know right away what my biggest number is going to be, because with 12 and 98 hundredths, there's a 1 in the tens place, as where these two decimals, there are no numbers in the tens place. So this is going to be my biggest number. So I have 12 and 98 hundredths, okay? Now I can start comparing these two numbers, 6 and 5/10 and 7 and 26 hundredths. So I'm going to look at the 6. It's one spot before the decimal. That's in the ones place. I'm going to look at 7 and 26 hundredths. I have a 7, which is also in the ones place. I can compare them because they are in the same place value spot and they're different numbers. So to get my smallest number, I'm looking at a 6 and a 7, and I know that 6 is less than 7. So my first number is going to be 6 and 5/10. I'm going to check it off, which leaves me with 7 and 26 hundredths in the middle, because 7 is less than 6, or excuse me, 7 is more than 6, and 7 is less than 12.